The smell of charred alien flesh stung Jerry Freeman's nostrils as human gunships strafed panicked Hirogen troops on the capital world below. The mighty Hirogen Empire was burning, and humans held the torches. Zephyr should have listened. How did it come to this? Captain Freeman had arrived at Zenith Prime leading a diplomatic mission, hoping to foster peace and cooperation between humans and the Hirogen. But the arrogant aliens spat on that olive branch. "Wait here, Earthers," a snide Hirogen bureaucrat sneered as Jerry's delegation cooled their heels for hours in a stark antechamber. "The Emperor has more pressing matters than indulging primitives." When they finally gained an audience, Emperor Zephyr lounged on his opulent throne, flanked by preening sycophants. The Hirogen ruler regarded Jerry with undisguised contempt. "You presume much coming here, human," Zephyr scoffed. "Your fledgling species is a mere gnat compared to our glorious empire. We are the masters of this galaxy." Jerry gritted his teeth but maintained a diplomatic tone. "Your Excellence, humans seek only friendship and peaceful coexistence. Surely there is room enough in the cosmos for both our peoples to flourish." "Peaceful coexistence?" Zephyr laughed derisively. "Here are our terms, Earther. Your ships will be seized if they enter our space. Your colonies will pay us tribute. You will submit to our rule. Be grateful we do not simply eradicate you." Shock rippled through the human delegation. These outrageous demands meant subjugation of Earth, an end to their very freedom. Jerry's temper flared, but he fought to control it. "Humanity bows to no one," he declared firmly, eyes flashing. "We do not scare easily. I urge you to reconsider this course, Emperor, for your own sake." Zephyr waved a dismissive hand. "Run along now, little ape. Keep yapping and we will muzzle you." Returning to his orbiting flagship, Jerry pounded a fist on his command chair, seething at the Hirogen's sheer gall and disrespect. He fired off an encrypted message to Earth, relaying Zephyr's aggression and recommending a show of force to put the Hirogen in their place. That show of force materialized weeks later in the form of a mighty human armada dropping out of hyperspace around Zenith Prime. Powerful dreadnoughts, swarms of fighters, strike craft bristling with advanced weaponry beyond anything the Hirogen possessed. As the Emperor gaped in disbelief at the massive fleet filling his view screens, Jerry broadcast a final warning to the Hirogen leadership. "Zephyr, you were cautioned not to mistake human peacefulness for weakness. We do not crave war, but we will not run from it. For too long, your empire has brutalized others, mistaking cruelty for strength and underestimating the true power of free species. No longer." Jerry's voice lowered to a growl. "Stand down or be destroyed. Withdraw your threats and we can talk as equals. Otherwise, you've sown the wind and will reap a whirlwind. Your planets are locked on by our guns. Remember this moment, Hirogen, when you dared poke the slumbering giant of Earth. Pray you did not awaken him fully. Push us further, and your worlds will burn." Faced with utter annihilation, Zephyr and his generals seethed with impotent fury as they watched the human armada's guns train on their cities and vital centers. The Hirogen fleet, once considered invincible, now hung back in disarray, outmatched and outgunned by the Earth ships that had appeared as if from nowhere. With his options dwindling by the second, Zephyr ground his teeth and spat out a single word to his communications officer. "Hail them." Minutes later, the Emperor found himself face-to-face with Jerry on the flagship's main view screen, the human captain's expression stern and uncompromising. "You have one chance, Zephyr," Jerry said flatly. "Negotiate or be destroyed." The Hirogen ruler's fists clenched, his eyes smoldering with barely suppressed rage. But with his empire's fate hanging by a thread, he had no choice. "Very well, human," he growled. "We will hear your terms." Jerry materialized aboard Zephyr's massive command ship, flanked by a contingent of battle-hardened space marines in powered armor, weapons at the ready. They marched into the ship's cavernous central control room, a chamber once used to oversee the conquest of dozens of star systems. Now, it played host to a grim-faced conclave. The Emperor, his top generals and advisors, all watching the humans warily. Not wasting a moment, Jerry laid out Earth's demands. Effective immediately, the Hirogen Empire will cease all acts of aggression and dismantle the subjugation of weaker species. Your armies will stand down and your war machine will be dismantled. Earth will supervise the decommissioning of your fleets and the establishment of arms limitation treaties. You will submit to our terms, or the next sound you hear will be our guns reducing your worlds to rubble. Zephyr shot to his feet, eyes blazing. You dare dictate to us, the Hirogen bow to no one. But even as the words left his mouth, a new report flashed across the room's main screens. Transmissions from the worlds languishing under Hirogen rule, where millions of subjugated citizens were rising up in open revolt, emboldened by the arrival of the human fleet. With his forces already stretched thin and facing a technologically superior foe, Zephyr could feel his grip on power slipping. For hours, the Hirogen Council engaged in tense deliberations, with heated words and bitter accusations flying. Some urged defiance, believing capitulation to be the ultimate dishonor. Others, seeing the writing on the wall, pressed Zephyr to accept the human demands and salvage what they could. In the end, with his empire fraying at the seams and Earth's weapons poised to strike, Zephyr had little choice. Swallowing his pride like a bitter poison, he ground out his acquiescence to Jerry's ultimatum, agreeing to stand down his forces and submit to human oversight. But the humiliations were not nearly finished. Jerry, his eyes sharp, then demanded that he and his crew be treated with the full respect and deference owed to emissaries of a power that had just brought the mighty Hirogen low. Choking back their bile, the cowed Hirogen leadership grudgingly rolled out the red carpet for the human delegation, hosting Jerry and his officers at a grand state banquet. The Earth representatives took their seats at the head of the table, as the once haughty Hirogen generals and aristocrats looked on in sullen silence, their resentment simmering behind tight-lipped smiles and toast after forced toast to the friendship between their peoples. The next day, at a ceremony broadcast across the Hirogen domains, Zephyr signed the accords that formalized his empire's capitulation, the ultimate symbol of their submission to Earth. As the Emperor scrawled his name on the document, effectively ending centuries of Hirogen dominance in a single stroke, the gathered Hirogen elites and senior officers stood in stony silence, their expressions masks of barely concealed rage and humiliation. Whispers of dissent and rebellion began to spread like wildfire through their ranks. Open talk of defiance and reprisal echoed in the halls of power, as many Hirogens saw capitulation to the humans as an unforgivable stain on their honor, an intolerable wound to the very soul of their warrior culture. As Jerry and the bulk of his fleet began the long journey back to Earth, their mission accomplished, a sizable contingent of human ships remained behind in Hirogen space, tasked with enforcing the terms of the Accords and monitoring for any signs of non-compliance. On Earth, news of the Armada's successful show of force was met with jubilation and praise for the bold leadership that had brought the Hirogen to heel without the loss of a single human life. The Senate floor rang with grandiose speeches hailing the dawn of a new Pax Humana, a galactic order safeguarded by Earth's military and technological might. But behind closed doors, the intelligence services were painting a darker picture. Scattered reports began to filter in, hinting at clandestine meetings between a brooding Zephyr and the shadowy command echelons of the Hirogen Black Talons, the Empire's most fanatic and lethal shock troops. Zealots known for their ironclad oaths of fealty and their utter ruthlessness in battle, it was said that the Black Talons would rather die than bend the knee to an alien power. In the shadows of defeat, Emperor Zephyr seethed with rage. The treaty ink barely dry, he gathered his most trusted Black Talon commanders in a hidden chamber deep within the Imperial Palace. "We will not bow to these human apes," Zephyr hissed, pounding his fist on the war table. "Prepare our forces in secret. The day of reclamation approaches." The Black Talons, elite warriors bred for conquest, nodded grimly. They scattered across Hirogen space, quietly amassing ships and weapons at hidden bases. Cloaked transports slipped through sensor nets, ferrying troops and supplies. In abandoned asteroid fields and gas giant moons, a vengeance fleet took shape. Meanwhile on Earth, Jerry Freeman stood before thunderous applause in the Senate chamber. "For exemplary service in subjugating the hydrogen threat," the president intoned, "I hereby promote you to admiral, with full command of our forces in occupied hydrogen space." Jerry accepted the new rank insignia, but unease gnawed at him. The hydrogen had folded too easily. Something wasn't right. Weeks passed. Jerry pored over reports in his new office on Zenith Prime. Disturbing patterns emerged. Human patrols vanishing without trace. Strange energy spikes near hydrogen bases. He ordered increased surveillance, but Zephyr's people always had plausible excuses. Then came the intercepted transmission. Jerry's aide burst into his quarters, datapad in hand. "Sir, one of our scout ships picked this up, partially decoded." Jerry scanned the message, blood running cold. "Day of reclamation. Strike at Earther occupiers. Inform Earth immediately. I want all bases on high alert." He stormed into Zephyr's throne room hours later, flanked by Marines. The Emperor lounged on his massive chair, the picture of bored indifference. "Explain this," Jerry growled, slamming the datapad down. Zephyr glanced at it lazily. "Some dissident chatter, nothing more. Surely you don't think we'd be foolish enough to—" A deafening boom cut him off. The floor shook. Alarms blared. Jerry's comm crackled. "Sir, massive explosion at HQ. We're under attack." He whirled on Zephyr, but the Emperor's chair was empty. Hydrogen warriors poured from hidden passages, weapons blazing. "To the ship!" Jerry shouted as his Marines returned fire. They fought their way out of the palace, bodies of friend and foe littering their path. The sky above Zenith Prime erupted in fire as cloaked hydrogen ships decloaked, hammering the unprepared human fleet. On the ground, Black Talon shock troops swarmed from underground bunkers, slaughtering human soldiers and civilians alike. Jerry's shuttle barely escaped the inferno, dodging debris and weapons fire. From orbit, he watched hydrogen forces overwhelm human positions across the planet. His comm channels filled with frantic distress calls from outposts throughout hydrogen space. "This is Admiral Freeman to all Earth forces," he broadcast. "We are under full assault. Assume defensive positions and hold until reinforcements arrive." He grimaced as Zephyr's massive flagship emerged from hyperspace, leading an armada that dwarfed the battered human fleet. "All ships form up," Jerry ordered. "We make our stand here." Jerry's flagship Defiance shuddered as another salvo of hydrogen missiles impacted its shields. Alarms blared across the bridge as damage reports flooded in from all decks. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Outpost Sigma." Lieutenant Park's voice cracked with tension. "The Black Talons overran their defenses." Jerry gripped the command chair, his teeth gritted. "Damn it, how many more?" "Sir, we're getting distress calls from bases across 3 sectors," Communications Officer Chen reported grimly. "It's a coordinated assault." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the orbital platforms above Zenith Prime erupting in flames as hydrogen warships swarmed them. Jerry watched in horror as the defense grid collapsed under the onslaught. "Get me a secure channel to all commands," Jerry ordered. "Priority Alpha." Chen nodded, fingers flying over his console. "You're on, sir." Jerry took a deep breath. "This is Admiral Freeman to all Earth forces. We are under full assault. Zenith Prime is lost. Initiate emergency protocols and begin immediate evacuation of all non-combat personnel." He turned to his XO. "Commander Reeves, coordinate with ground forces. Get as many people off-world as we can." Reeves saluted and sprinted to the tactical station. Jerry watched grimly as evacuation pods began launching from the surface, streaking for the safety of waiting transports. Human destroyers moved to screen the civilian ships, exchanging furious broadsides with hydrogen cruisers. The space around Zenith Prime became a maelstrom of weapons fire and explosions. On the planet below, Lieutenant Marcus Rhodes crouched behind a destroyed barricade, plasma rifle clutched to his chest. The acrid stench of ozone and burning flesh filled the air as Black Talon shock troops stormed the compound. "Martinez, watch that left flank," Rhodes shouted over the din of battle. A Marine to his right screamed as Hirogen fire tore through his armor. Rhodes popped up, squeezing off precise bursts that dropped 2 charging talons. But for every alien he killed, 3 more seemed to take its place. "Sir, they've breached the inner perimeter," Sergeant Wei called out. "We can't hold them." Rhodes gritted his teeth. "Fall back to checkpoint Charlie. We buy time for the evac at any expense." His dwindling squad retreated down smoke-filled corridors, fighting a brutal rearguard action. Rhodes watched good soldiers fall one by one to the relentless Hirogen assault. In orbit, Jerry's battered fleet struggled to cover the fleeing civilian ships. The Defiance rocked as a Hirogen dreadnought pummeled it with energy beams. "Sir, structural integrity failing," an ensign cried out. "We can't take much more of this." Jerry's hands flew over his command console. "All ships, this is Admiral Freeman. Break formation and make for the rally point. We've done all we can here." As the remnants of the human fleet limped away from Zenith Prime, Jerry watched Hirogen nukes detonate across the planet's surface. He closed his eyes, silently mourning the thousands left behind. Days later, aboard the regrouping Earth Armada, Jerry stood before a holographic star map with Admirals Madsen and Jarvis. "The Hirogen have overrun most of our forward bases," Madsen reported grimly. "But our core colonies are still holding out." Jerry nodded. "Then we hit them back before they can consolidate. Kelly, your stealth ships will be key. We'll draw Zephyr's main fleet into this nebula here, then spring the trap." As they finalized the daring counterattack plan, alarms suddenly blared. A comms officer burst onto the bridge. "Sirs, we're picking up a transmission from Tarakan. They're under heavy bombardment." Jerry's blood ran cold as the officer patched through the desperate message. The sound of explosions nearly drowned out the garrison commander's voice. "This is Colonel Hayes on Tarakan. We're surrounded by Hirogen forces demanding our surrender. But we will never yield to these bastards. Earth forever." The transmission cut off abruptly. Jerry bowed his head, honoring the doomed garrison's sacrifice. When he looked up, his eyes blazed with dedication. "Admirals, it's time we showed these Hirogen the true might of humanity. Prepare the fleet for battle." The bridge of the Defiance shuddered as Jerry Freeman watched the massive Hirogen armada close in. Alarms blared, and the tactical display flickered with a sea of red dots representing enemy ships. "All hands, brace for impact!" Jerry shouted, gripping his command chair. But the expected barrage never came. Instead, space lit up with brilliant flashes as Admiral Madsen's stealth squadron struck. Antimatter warheads slammed into Hirogen capital ships, their shields unable to react in time. On the main view screen, Jerry watched Zephyr's flagship superiority take multiple hits. The behemoth's shields flickered and failed, leaving it vulnerable. "Now, Jarvis!" Jerry barked into the comm. At the system's edge, Admiral Jarvis's battle group dropped their cloaks. Swarms of robotic drones poured forth, diving into the heart of the Hirogen formation. The void erupted in chaos. Hirogen ships, caught off guard, frantically tried to defend against the onslaught. Armor-piercing disruptors tore through hulls, and explosions bloomed in silent fury. "All ships, push forward," Jerry ordered, seizing the moment. "Engage at point-blank range." The Defiance's engines roared as it surged ahead, leading the charge. Human dreadnoughts closed with the battered Hirogen vanguard, trading devastating broadsides. Jerry's tactical officer shouted over the din, "Sir, superiority is still operational. They're counterattacking." Through the maelstrom of battle, Jerry saw Zephyr's crippled flagship stubbornly pressing the attack. Laser batteries and missile launchers still fired, even as fires raged across its hull. "Concentrate fire on superiority," Jerry commanded. "We end this now." The space between the fleets became a killing field. Human and Hirogen ships alike vanished in balls of plasma and twisted metal. Debris fields grew, threatening to choke off maneuvering room. As casualties mounted on both sides, Jerry felt the tide of battle wavering. His ships were holding, but at a terrible cost. He needed one more push to break the Hirogen. Then, as if in answer to his thoughts, new contacts appeared on sensors. Admiral Madsen's main stealth armada decloaked, encircling the Hydrogen core. "All ships, this is Admiral Madsen," her voice crackled over the comm. "Fire at will!" A hurricane of ordnance erupted from every angle, catching the Hydrogen in a devastating crossfire. Superiority's command deck exploded, severing Zephyr's control over his forces. Jerry watched in grim satisfaction as the Hydrogen vanguard began to crumble. Zephyr's remaining ships, leaderless and outgunned, started to break formation. "Sir, enemy fleet is in full retreat," his XO reported. "They're abandoning the system." A ragged cheer went up on the Defiance's bridge. Jerry allowed himself a moment of relief before focusing on the next phase. "This isn't over," he said, silencing the celebration. "Plot an intercept course for their rear guard. We're going to keep pushing until there's nothing left of Zephyr's offensive to regroup." As the battered but victorious human armada formed up to give chase, Jerry stared at the tactical display. They'd won a crucial victory, but the war was far from finished. He vowed to press their advantage, to strike deep into Hydrogen territory before Zephyr could recover. "All ships, prepare for pursuit," Jerry ordered. "We end this war now before another human world falls." The Defiance's engines flared as it led the fleet forward, plunging into the unknown depths of Hydrogen space. The Defiance shuddered as another salvo of Hydrogen missiles impacted its shields. Jerry Freeman stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the tactical display showing Kragax Prime's looming defenses. "Status report," he barked. "Shields holding at 68%, Admiral," his XO replied. "Jarvis reports success drawing off defenders at Caldor. Madsen's stealth units are in position." Jerry nodded. "Commence primary assault. All ships push forward." The void erupted in a storm of weapons fire as the human armada surged toward Kragax Prime. Massive dreadnoughts traded broadsides with Hydrogen orbital platforms, while swarms of fighters clashed in the space between. On the planet's surface, Lieutenant Marcus Rhodes crouched behind a half-destroyed wall, plasma rifle clutched to his chest. The stench of ozone and burning metal filled his nostrils as he peered around the corner. "Talon Squad, moving left," he hissed into his comm. His team of Pathfinders darted from cover to cover, dodging Hydrogen fire as they closed in on the power nexus. Rhodes' heart pounded as he sprinted the final stretch, diving through the facility's shattered entrance. Inside, chaos reigned. Hydrogen technicians scrambled to fortify their positions as alarms blared. Rhodes' team moved with practiced precision, neutralizing threats and securing choke points. "Plant the charges," Rhodes ordered, taking aim at an approaching squad of Black Talons. As his team worked, Rhodes' comm crackled to life. "This is Admiral Freeman to all ground forces. Shields are down. Main invasion force incoming. Hold your positions." Rhodes allowed himself a grim smile as the first human dropship screamed through the atmosphere. The real fight was about to begin. In the heart of Kragax Prime, Emperor Zephyr paced his command bunker, rage twisting his features as reports flooded in. "How did they penetrate our defenses so quickly?" he snarled at his cowering subordinates. A Black Talon commander stepped forward. "My lord, we've detected energy signatures consistent with human stealth technology. They must have—" Zephyr silenced him with a backhand strike. "Excuses! I want every able-bodied Hydrogen mobilized. We will drown these humans in their own blood." As Zephyr ranted, Jerry Freeman's invasion force touched down on Kragax Prime's scorched plains. Thousands of heavily armed Marines poured from massive troop carriers, immediately engaging Hydrogen defenders. The air filled with the chatter of assault rifles and the whine of energy weapons as both sides clashed. Human armor columns rumbled forward, providing covering fire for advancing infantry. In the midst of the chaos, Jerry Freeman directed the assault from his command vehicle. "Push them back," he ordered. "I want a clear path to that central district." Block by block, the human forces advanced. Hydrogen resistance stiffened as they neared the government sector, with Black Talon elite units joining the fray. As night fell on Kragax Prime, the shipyard districts became a hellscape of burning wreckage and street-to-street warfare. Human and Hydrogen alike fought with savage intensity, knowing the fate of their respective empires hung in the balance. Deep in the heart of the Hirogen capital, Emperor Zephyr gazed out at the carnage engulfing his world. His eyes narrowed as he spotted a familiar insignia among the advancing human forces. "Freeman," he growled. "So you've come to face me yourself." Zephyr turned to his Black Talon captain. "Prepare my personal guard. It's time to show these humans the true might of the Hirogen Empire." As explosions lit up the night sky, two implacable foes drew ever closer to their final confrontation. The sky above Kragax Prime blazed with fire as Admiral Freeman's invasion force descended upon the Hirogen capital. Massive troop carriers disgorged wave after wave of Marines onto the scorched ground below. Plasma bolts and energy beams crisscrossed the air as Black Talon defenders rushed to meet the human onslaught. Lieutenant Marcus Rhodes crouched in the belly of a stealth dropship, his Pathfinder squad tense and ready. The pilot's voice crackled over the comm. "LZ, hot! 30 seconds!" Rhodes checked his gear one last time. "Remember the mission. We hit fast, we hit hard, no hesitation." The dropship's bay doors slid open, revealing the chaos below. Rhodes leapt out, activating his grav chute at the last second. He touched down in a crouch, plasma rifle at the ready. "Move!" he barked, leading his team through the shadows of towering industrial complexes. While the main invasion force hammered at Kragax Prime's defenses, Rhodes and his Pathfinders slipped deeper into enemy territory. They moved with practiced efficiency, planting charges on power relays and sabotaging communication hubs. Alarms blared as entire city blocks went dark. Rhodes allowed himself a grim smile. That ought to throw a wrench in their plans. Meanwhile, Admiral Freeman directed the assault from his command vehicle. Holographic displays showed the battle unfolding across the cityscape. "Push forward!" Freeman ordered as a fresh wave of Marines poured into the fray. "I want those palace defenses breached." Hirogen bunkers and fortified positions crumbled under relentless bombardment. Yet the Black Talons fought with fanatic intensity, their energy weapons carving bloody swaths through advancing human units. A Marine sergeant's panicked voice cut through the comm chatter. "Sir, they've got heavy plasma cannons zeroed in on our position." Freeman's eyebrows furrowed. "All units, fall back and regroup. Bring up the Goliaths." Massive armored walkers thundered onto the battlefield, their railguns unleashing devastating barrages. Block by block, the humans clawed their way towards the central palace. Deep within the command complex, Emperor Zephyr paced like a caged animal. Sweat beaded on his mottled skin as reports of human advances flooded in. "Arm the fail-safes," he snarled at a trembling technician. "If we fall, we'll take these human vermin with us." But before the fatal command could be given, an explosion rocked the chamber. Rhodes and his Pathfinders burst through the smoke, weapons blazing. The room erupted into chaos. Black Talon guards threw themselves at the humans with suicidal fury. Rhodes ducked under a vicious swing, his combat knife finding a weak point in Hirogen armor. For several frantic minutes, the two sides grappled in a whirlwind of blood and violence. Rhodes's team fought with cold precision, their enhanced reflexes giving them a crucial edge. As the last guard fell, Rhodes found himself face to face with Emperor Zephyr himself. The Hirogen ruler's eyes burned with hatred as he lunged forward. Rhodes met the attack head-on. They traded savage blows, neither willing to yield. But in the end, human tenacity prevailed. With a final bone-jarring strike, Rhodes sent Zephyr crashing to the ground. As Rhodes secured the fallen Emperor, the sound of gunfire outside began to fade. Word of Zephyr's capture spread like wildfire through the Hirogen ranks. One by one, pockets of resistance crumbled. Admiral Freeman's voice crackled over the comm. "Status report, Lieutenant." Rhodes looked down at the bound form of Emperor Zephyr, allowing himself a moment of grim satisfaction. "Mission accomplished, sir. The tyrant is ours." Admiral Jerry Freeman stood atop a ruined Hirogen command tower, surveying the smoldering wreckage of Kragax Prime's shipyard districts. The acrid stench of burning metal and ozone filled the air as Marine squads methodically swept through the twisted hulks of half-built warships. "Status report," Freeman barked into his comm. "Sir, We've secured the main fabrication facilities, a gruff voice replied. Pockets of Black Talon resistance in Sectors 7 and 9, but we're mopping them up. Freeman nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. Sporadic weapons fire echoed in the distance as the last fanatical Hirogen defenders were rooted out of their hiding spots. Bring the prisoner, he ordered. Two heavily armed Marines dragged Emperor Zephyr onto the observation deck. The once mighty Hirogen ruler's armor was scorched and dented, his wrists bound by energy shackles. Despite his capture, Zephyr's eyes blazed with defiance. Freeman turned to face his defeated foe. It's over, Zephyr. Your empire lies in ruins. Zephyr spat at Freeman's feet. Kill me and be done with it, human. I won't beg for mercy. Oh, I'm not going to kill you, Freeman said, his voice cold. Not yet. You're going to do something for me first. He activated a holoprojector, displaying a tactical map of Hirogen space. Thousands of red dots representing enemy ships and installations blinked ominously. You're going to order the complete, unconditional surrender of all remaining Hirogen forces, Freeman declared. Every ship, every garrison, every Black Talon squad. Total capitulation. Zephyr's eyes widened. Never! I'd rather die than betray my people. Freeman leaned in close, his voice a menacing whisper. If you don't, I'll execute you and your entire high command. Then I'll glass every Hirogen world from orbit. Your species will be nothing but a footnote in history books. For a long moment, Zephyr stared into Freeman's eyes, searching for any hint of bluff. He found none. With a bitter snarl, Zephyr nodded. Very well, human. I'll do as you ask. Freeman gestured to a communications officer who set up a broadcast array. Zephyr stood before it, his shoulders slumped in defeat. This is Emperor Zephyr, he began, his voice echoing across Hirogen space. Our capital has fallen. The war is lost. I hereby order all Hirogen forces to lay down their arms and surrender to human authority. He paused, choking on the words. The Black Talons are dead to the Empire. Any who continue to resist are traitors and will be treated as such. As Zephyr finished his address, Freeman watched the tactical display. One by one, the red dots began to wink out as Hirogen ships and installations stood down. In the days that followed, Admiral Madson's stealth fleets fanned out across former Hirogen territory. They oversaw the stripping of weapons from surrendering warships and the pacification of ground forces. On Kregax Prime, Freeman organized a formal surrender ceremony. In the grand hall of the former Imperial Palace, before the watchful eyes of holo cameras broadcasting to every human world, Zephyr knelt before Freeman. I, Emperor Zephyr, last ruler of the Hirogen Empire, he intoned, his voice hollow, do hereby swear fealty to Earth and its dominion. I agree to the permanent dissolution of all Hirogen military forces and cede control of our territory to humanity. Freeman placed his boot on Zephyr's neck, a symbolic gesture of total subjugation. Cheers erupted from the assembled human troops and settlers. In the months that followed, isolated acts of sabotage and lone wolf attacks by die-hard Hirogen resistance fighters plagued the occupation forces. But without centralized leadership or heavy weapons, they posed little threat to human control. On Earth, Freeman was hailed as a conquering hero. He stood before cheering crowds in Times Square, waving as confetti rained down. Banners proclaimed him the Hammer of Humanity and Breaker of the Hirogen. In recognition of his victory, Freeman was named Supreme Military Governor of the former Hirogen territories. He wasted no time in consolidating human control, overseeing the arrival of the first colonial fleets. Human engineers and workers swarmed over the abandoned Hirogen shipyards and weapons factories. They stripped them for valuable technology and raw materials, fueling a new wave of expansion. On Kregax Prime, Freeman personally oversaw the construction of a maximum security prison to house Zephyr and his surviving Black Talon commanders. He watched with satisfaction as the defeated warlords were marched into their cells, impotent rage evident on their alien faces. As human settlers and Marines filled the streets of the former Hirogen capital, Freeman turned his attention to pacifying the conquered population. He established strict curfews and travel restrictions, creating walled-off reservation zones to concentrate the Hirogen civilians. Freeman stood in his office, overlooking the sprawling internment camp that now dominated Kragax Prime's central district. Barbed wire fences and guard towers cast long shadows in the alien sun. "Sir," his aide said, handing him a datapad. "The latest reports on the forced labor program. Productivity is up 20% this quarter." Freeman nodded, scanning the figures. In the distance, he could see long lines of Hirogen shuffling towards the reclaimed factories and mines that now served human interests. "Good," he said. "Double the work quotas. I want every scrap of resources squeezed out of these worlds." "Sir," the aide hesitated, "there have been concerns raised by some civil rights groups back on Earth. They say the conditions in the camps are—" Freeman cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Soft-hearted fools. They weren't here when the Hirogen butchered millions of our people. Tell them this is the price of security." He turned back to the window, watching as human gunships patrolled the skies over the conquered city. "We'll never let the Hirogen threaten us again, whatever it takes." The veneer of human control over the conquered Hirogen territories began to crack. On Jara 4, a human supply convoy wound its way through the dense forests of the Dregor Mountains. Sergeant Elena Vasquez scanned the tree line, her fingers tightening on her plasma rifle. "Movement, 2 o'clock, she barked. The convoy ground to a halt. For a moment, silence reigned. Then chaos erupted. Hirogen guerrillas materialized from the undergrowth, their cloaking devices fizzing out as they opened fire. Energy bolts slammed into the lead vehicle, melting through its armor. Vasquez dove for cover, returning fire. "Contact rear. We're surrounded." The ambush was over in minutes. As the smoke cleared, Vasquez surveyed the wreckage. Half her squad lay dead or wounded. The convoy's precious cargo of food and medical supplies was gone, along with 3 of their vehicles. Back on Kragax Prime, Admiral Freeman paced in his office. His aide, Lieutenant Harding, delivered the latest report. "Sir, we've lost another outpost on Jara Forum. The Dregor rebels hit it at dawn. No survivors." Freeman's fist slammed onto his desk. "Enough! I want every suspected rebel sympathizer rounded up. Now!" Harding swallowed hard. "Sir, that would mean detaining tens of thousands of civilians." "Then do it," Freeman snarled. "I'll break their will to resist if it's the last thing I do." In the days that followed, human dropships descended on Hirogen settlements across the occupied worlds. Marines in full combat gear dragged families from their homes, herding them into massive open-air camps ringed by energy fences and automated turrets. On Jara 4, Lieutenant Rhodes limped through one such camp, his recent wounds still healing. Hirogen of all ages huddled in makeshift shelters, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hatred. A young Hirogen boy, no more than 10 cycles old, darted in front of Rhodes. "Human devil!" he spat, hurling a rock. Rhodes caught the projectile easily. He locked eyes with the child, seeing not an enemy, but a reflection of the violence that had consumed this world. "Stand down, soldier," Rhodes said softly, tossing the rock aside. In his maximum security cell on Kragax Prime, Emperor Zephyr sat motionless, his eyes closed in meditation. To the human guards, he appeared defeated. In reality, his mind raced. Through methods known only to the most elite black talents, Zephyr had established a tenuous psychic link with his most trusted commanders. Even now, he orchestrated the resistance from within the very heart of human-controlled space. "The humans grow desperate," Zephyr communicated. "Their iron fist will be their undoing. Strike at their supply lines. Bleed them slowly." Across the sector, Hirogen freedom fighters answered their emperor's call. Human patrols vanished without a trace. Colonial outposts went dark. The occupation force found itself mired in a war of shadows. Admiral Freeman's response was swift and brutal. He deployed elite Marine recon units, armed with the latest in anti-stealth technology. Their orders were simple: find the rebel leadership and eliminate them with extreme prejudice. On Jara 4, Lieutenant Rhodes led his battered Pathfinder squad through the twisting canyons of the Redgrass Valley. Intelligence suggested the notorious guerrilla leader known as the Black Ghost had established a base in the region. As night fell, Rhodes activated his thermal imaging. Movement ahead. Stack up. The Pathfinders crept forward, their boots silent on the rocky ground. They rounded a bend and found themselves face to face with a group of Hirogen rebels. For a heartbeat, both sides froze. Then all hell broke loose. Energy weapons lit up the night. Rhodes dove for cover, shouting orders. Flanking maneuver. Bravo team, circle left. But something was wrong. The Hirogen moved with uncanny precision, as if they could anticipate every human action. Rhodes watched in horror as his squad was cut down around him. Fall back, he roared, laying down covering fire. A searing pain tore through his side. Rhodes stumbled, feeling warm blood seep through his armor. He turned to see a towering Hirogen warrior materialize from thin air, energy blade humming. The Black Ghost had revealed himself at last. Rhodes raised his weapon, but it was too late. The Hirogen's blade slashed down, and darkness claimed him. In orbit above Jara 4, Admiral Madsen received the transmission he'd been dreading. Pathfinder squad wiped out. Lieutenant Rhodes MIA, presumed KIA. Madsen's hands clenched into fists. He turned to his tactical officer. Activate Project Longsword. Full deployment. I want every inch of that planet scoured. Across Jara 4 and a dozen other contested worlds, stealth drones hummed to life. They streaked through the atmosphere, their advanced sensors piercing even the most sophisticated Hirogen cloaking fields. The hunt for the Black Ghost had begun in earnest, and with it, a new and deadlier phase of the war. The longsword drones cut through the night sky of Jara 4, their sleek forms barely visible against the stars. Inside the rebel command bunker, alarms blared as sensors detected the approaching swarm. "They found us," growled the Hirogen commander, his claws digging into the tactical display. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel. Activate the jamming fields." But the drones were relentless. They smashed through defensive screens, their advanced targeting systems picking out key rebel leaders with ruthless efficiency. Energy weapons lanced out, vaporizing entire sections of the underground complex. In the chaos, civilians caught in the crossfire ran screaming through burning corridors. The drones showed no mercy, their algorithms focused solely on eliminating threats. Men, women, and children alike fell before the onslaught. Across a dozen worlds, similar scenes played out. The Black Ghost watched from the shadows as his carefully built network of resistance crumbled, but he was not finished yet. On a remote asteroid base, the guerrilla leader stood before a stockpile of archaic Hirogen weapons. "These will turn the tide," he told his lieutenants. "We'll make the humans pay for every world they've stolen." The Magna Pulse warheads were loaded onto stealth ships bound for the newly terraformed colonies of Garada 5, Oxhar III, and New Patagon. As the vessels slipped past human patrols, the Black Ghost transmitted a final message to his followers. "Let the Earthers reap what they have sown. We will scorch their stolen paradise and salt the earth with radiation. They sought to break us, but we are forged in the fires of adversity. Rise up, my brothers and sisters. The true war begins now." On Garada Phi, the first attacks caught the human colonists completely off guard. Antimatter cascades ripped through carefully calibrated terraforming machinery, triggering uncontrolled reactions. The sky turned in sickly green as radiation levels spiked to lethal levels. "This is Governor Reeves to all citizens," a panicked voice broadcast across the emergency channels. "Proceed immediately to designated evacuation centers. This is not a drill. May God have mercy on us all." Thousands of colonists mobbed the spaceports, desperate to escape as the very air around them became poison. But even as the evacuation ships lifted off, Hirogen fighters swooped in. "For the Emperor!" The rebel pilots screamed as they unleashed volleys of plasma fire. Shuttles exploded in mid-air, raining burning debris onto the crowds below. Admiral Freeman stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching in horror as reports flooded in from the stricken worlds. his fists clenched as he issued new orders. All available ships converge on the outer colonies. Priority is evacuation of civilians. Shoot down any Hirogen vessel that approaches, no exceptions. But it was too late for many. The once verdant worlds of humanity's expansion were reduced to irradiated wastelands in a matter of hours. Freeman could only watch helplessly as billions of credits in colonial infrastructure and countless innocent lives were wiped away. As the terrible news reached Earth, the reaction was swift and furious. Crowds gathered in the streets of every major city, their angry chants echoing off gleaming skyscrapers. "No more blood for Empire, bring our people home." In the halls of the Terran Senate, opposition leaders called for Freeman's immediate resignation. "This mad crusade has brought us nothing but ruin," Senator Alvarez thundered from the podium. "How many more must die before we admit this occupation was a mistake?" But the greatest spectacle was yet to come. In a heavily guarded courtroom, Emperor Zephyr stood trial for his crimes against humanity. Yet, even in chains, the Hirogen leader radiated defiance. "You call me a monster," Zephyr sneered at the assembled human judges. "But I wonder, how will history remember the butchers who glassed my homeworld? Who herded my people into camps like animals?" His words were broadcast across both human and former Hirogen space. In the occupied territories, they fell on eager ears. A new fire of resistance was ignited, fueled by rage and the thirst for vengeance. Freeman sat alone in his office, staring at tactical displays showing rebel activity flaring up across a dozen systems. The once ironclad grip of human control was slipping away, leaving only ashes and hatred in its wake. "Was it worth it?" he whispered to himself. "All this death, for what?" But there were no easy answers to be found among the stars. Only the certainty that the conflict he had started would rage on, perhaps for generations to come. The abyss of total war yawned wide, threatening to swallow both species in its unforgiving depths.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.